After my husband died, my children took the house, the money, and the business. The only thing they left me was my late sister's broken roadside motel in Arizona. They called it worthless. They were wrong. Before I tell you what I found in room 8, subscribe now if you love family stories where the truth hides inside the one thing everyone else laughs at. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, because some betrayals do not begin with screaming. They begin with concern, with practical language, with legal pads on dining room tables, with children who start speaking about your life as if they are already pricing the furniture. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 69 years old, and until last winter, I believed the worst thing that could happen to a woman after nearly 50 years of marriage was losing her husband. I was wrong. Grief is terrible, but grief with paperwork waiting in the next room is worse. My husband, Walter, died on a Monday in November. 49 years of marriage. 73 years old. He died in his recliner with the television still on and a mug of coffee gone cold on the end table beside him. People told me that meant he went peacefully. People say foolish things to widows. Peaceful for whom? Not for the woman who has to call 911 with hands so unsteady she misdials twice. Not for the woman who has to choose the tie for the burial suit while her son stands in the hallway trying to sound competent for the funeral director. Not for the woman who keeps waking at 2:13 in the morning because the house settles, and for one small stupid second, she still thinks her husband is the one walking down the hallway. Walter and I built a good life. Not flashy. Not country club rich. Not the kind of life strangers envy. The kind decent people build slowly. A good house outside Tucson. A landscaping business that grew one customer at a time until we had 12 full-time employees, 3 trucks, equipment, accounts, and a reputation that mattered in town. Savings. Retirement. No mortgage. No wild luxuries. But comfort. Earned comfort. That part matters. Because what my children took after Walter died was not just money. They took the shape of the life he and I built, one invoice, one skip vacation, one late-night payroll session at a time. We had 2 children. My son Ryan, 43, married to Tessa. My daughter Melissa, 40, twice divorced. Always, as she liked to put it, between opportunities. That phrase means what most family phrases mean. It hides something ungenerous under softer wording. In Melissa's case, it meant she needed help every month but wanted it to sound temporary, modern, and not at all like dependence. We also had the usual orbiting family. My older brother Raymond, gruff, suspicious, reliable in that inconvenient way honest men often are. My cousin Jolene. If appetite could wear perfume and carry a tote bag full of probate questions, it would look exactly like Jolene. And then there was my late sister Bonnie. Bonnie matters more than everyone except maybe Walter and me. Because when my children rushed to divide the obvious assets, the one thing they left me was the one thing that had belonged to Bonnie. The Desert Star Motel. 8 rooms. A sun-faded turquoise sign. A cracked empty pool. A dead ice machine. An office that smelled like bleach, dust, coffee, and exhaustion. Bonnie had run it for 30 years outside Kingman, Arizona. She smoked like she had a private argument with oxygen. Kept a pistol in the office drawer. Balanced her books in pen, not pencil, because in her words, if you're wrong, you should at least have the decency to live with it in ink. 3 years before Walter died, Bonnie died too. And when she died, nobody in the family wanted the motel. Nobody wanted the back taxes. Nobody wanted the county citations. Nobody wanted the maintenance. Nobody wanted the embarrassment of owning something that looked like it belonged in a failed highway postcard from 1979. Bonnie once told me, over weak coffee and pie that tasted faintly like freezer burn, that ugly property is safer than pretty money. I laughed. She didn't. Greedy people know how to recognize what already looks rich, she said. That's why you never leave your future where shallow people can admire it. At the time I thought she was being Bonnie. Dramatic. Hard. A little paranoid. 3 years later I understood she had been doing what she always did best. Warning me without sounding sentimental. The funeral for Walter was tasteful. Ryan made sure of that. Dark suit. Lowered voice. Firm handshake. He stood by the casket like the son people expect the eldest son to become when his father dies. Controlled. Useful. Adult. Melissa cried beautifully. Not fake. Not entirely, but beautifully. The kind of crying that still remembers where the mascara sits. Tessa wore cream wool and moved through the room with efficient solemnity, collecting names, making sure cards were stacked, making sure food had arrived, making sure people saw her, making sure. That was Tessa. Competence with a witness. 3 days after the funeral, she texted me to ask whether anyone had identified all relevant account access. Relevant account access. That should have told me everything. But grief makes intelligent women generous toward ugly language. You hear stress. You hear organization. You do not hear what is really there. Timing. Positioning. Entry. 2 weeks later, Ryan invited me to what he called a practical meeting. Practical. That word is a threat in a blazer. I drove to his house. The house Walter and I helped him buy 15 years earlier with the down payment he has since referred to as a family assist. As if generosity were a category of financing rather than love made visible. Tessa opened the door. Too warm. Too ready. Melissa was already there. There was lemon water on the table. A folder. A legal pad. A laptop. No one arranges lemon water and printed tabs because they want to comfort a widow. They do it because they want to manage one. Ryan began in his client voice. Mom, we just want to make sure everything is handled efficiently. There it was. Efficiently. The first clean slice. They had gone through the business accounts, the deed records, the truck titles, the retirement paperwork, the office lease, the vendor logins, the insurance policies, everything. And somehow, with breathtaking speed, every piece of our life had already started sliding toward their hands. Ryan said operational control of the landscaping company needed to pass to him immediately for continuity. Melissa said the house was too much property for one woman. Tessa said, in the tone of a woman discussing weather patterns rather than widowhood, from a risk standpoint, centralizing authority right now protects everyone. That sentence still makes me tired. Protects everyone. What she meant was, if we move quickly enough, your grief won't have time to develop boundaries. The accounts needed consolidation. The house needed liquidity. The business needed stable leadership. The trucks were operational assets. My widowhood was being translated into bullet points, while I was still sleeping on Walter's side of the bed with my hand reaching into nothing. I remember looking around the dining table and realizing, in one strange cold instant, that no one was speaking to me as if I were still the surviving half of a marriage. They were speaking to me as if I were a temporary obstacle between them and clean paperwork. That was the moment everything changed. Not externally. Internally. I stopped assuming love was the operating principle in the room. That matters. Because once you stop assuming love, you begin hearing the language clearly. Transition. Consolidation. Exposure. Oversight. Timing. Cleanup. God, that word. Cleanup. As if Walter had died and left a mess instead of a wife. I asked the only question that mattered. Is there anything you're not taking? Ryan and Melissa exchanged a look. Tessa did not. She already knew. There's Aunt Bonnie's motel, Melissa said. Technically your share there passed to you after Bonnie died, but no one ever did anything with it. Ryan actually laughed. The Desert Star is basically condemned. Back taxes. Plumbing issues. Probably termites. If you really want something to keep, that's available. Available. Like a cracked lamp someone leaves by the curb. I said, I'll take it. All three of them looked at me. Ryan frowned. Mom, I don't think you understand. That place is worthless. Then you won't miss it. Melissa said, there's nothing there. I said, then it's a fair gift. And because they believed it was nothing, they let me have it. That was the mistake that would cost them everything. They took the house. They took the visible accounts. They took the main truck. They took operational control of the business. They took access. They took the easy things. The things that looked valuable. And they left me the one thing that looked tired, ugly, and dead. I stayed in Melissa's guest room for 19 days. That was all it took to understand what being looked after really means when the wrong people say it. Her condo was gray and spotless and smelled like vanilla candles and impatience. My suitcase took up too much room. My grief took up too much oxygen. The television had to stay low because the walls are thin. The coffee maker was complicated enough to feel unfriendly. There were brochures for senior apartment communities on the kitchen counter. Silverbrook, Golden Terrace. Names designed to sound like surrender and pastel. Melissa was not cruel in the obvious way. That almost made it worse. She was distracted, restless, always rearranging things, always saying, "I just think we need to be realistic." Realistic. Another dangerous word. Ryan called every other day asking if I had thought more about timing. Timing for what? The sale. The handoff. The cleanup. The transition. There it was again. Transition. As if I were being gently moved from one lifestyle package to another. One morning Melissa said without looking at me, "Honestly, Mom, the motel might be good for you." A project. Project. That is what women become when families want to avoid calling them human. Project. A burden. Transition. A logistics problem. I packed on the 19th morning. One suitcase. One coat. One handbag. One framed photo of Walter from our 25th anniversary. And the brass room key Bonnie mailed me years earlier with a note that said, "If you ever have nowhere else to go, room 8 still opens." At the time I thought Bonnie was being sentimental. Bonnie was never sentimental. Bonnie was strategic. I took a bus to Kingman. 69 years old. $83 in cash. No house. No car. No control over the business I had helped build by doing payroll every Sunday night for 20 years. Only a motel no one wanted. The Desert Star looked worse than memory. That takes effort in Arizona. The sign leaned. The office blinds were yellowed. The pool looked like someone had tried to bury summer and then given up. 3 windows were boarded. The gravel lot had more weeds than parked cars. But room 8 still opened. Bonnie had been right about that. The room smelled like old bleach, sun-baked curtains, stale drywall, and years of no one asking anything of it. The faucet sputtered before water came. The air conditioner rattled. The bedspread was ugly enough to have legal standing. That first night, sitting on the edge of that narrow motel bed with one suitcase and a dead husband and no place left in my children's lives, I thought, they gave me what they thought was nothing. They were wrong. The next morning I cleaned. That is what women like me do when the world becomes unbearable. We impose order in whatever square footage still answers to our hands. I cleaned room 8, then the walkway, then the office, then the laundry room. An old man in Unit 3 named Leonard helped me with the breaker panel in exchange for coffee and tuna sandwiches. He claimed he had once toured with a country band. I did not believe him. But he knew electrical panels and never once asked me a question about money, so I liked him immediately. A waitress from the diner across the road told me Bonnie used to say the motel wasn't the business. That sentence stayed with me. The motel wasn't the business. If the motel wasn't the business, what was? So I started in the office. Because if you want the truth about a person, you begin where they kept their records. Bonnie's desk was still there. A clicking fan. A dead adding machine. A chipped mug full of pins. A drawer that smelled faintly like cigarette ash even after 3 years. And a locked lower cabinet. The key was taped under the cash drawer. Classic Bonnie. Inside were guest logs. Repair receipts. Tax notices. Old supply orders. Utility shutoff warnings. An envelope with nothing but a dead moth inside. And at the bottom, wrapped in a dish towel, the ledger. Not room bookings. Not occupancy. Not weekly income. Land parcels. Purchase dates. Parcel IDs. Survey notes. Easements. Well access. Water rights. First, I thought I was misreading it. Then I thought Bonnie had gone halfway mad before she died. Then I turned another page and the pattern became undeniable. She had been buying strips of land around and behind the motel for years. Tiny things. Odd things. Dust parcels. Scrub parcels. Narrow access lines. The kind of property people laugh at because it doesn't sparkle. Then I saw the phrase repeated. Water rights. That was when my pulse changed. Water rights in Arizona are not decorative. They are leverage. I kept reading. At the back of the ledger, taped beneath the last page, was a deposit box receipt. And on the back, in Bonnie's jagged block handwriting, were the words, "If the family ever circles after a funeral, don't trust the building. Trust the ground." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I laughed. Then I cried. Then I called the bank. The deposit box took 3 days to access. 3 days of probate forms, ID checks, beneficiary paperwork, and a county clerk who looked like she had watched more than one family go feral over less. Inside the box were deeds, maps, contracts, a notarized letter, and a legal memo from a water attorney in Phoenix that made me sit down so fast the chair squealed. The memo explained that the land Bonnie had assembled beneath and around the Desert Star had become strategically significant. Pipeline access, commercial corridor planning, water positioning, easements, future development routes. I read it once, then again, then a third time more slowly. Then I took the documents to a title office, because sometimes something sounds too large to believe until 3 professionals repeat it in separate rooms. Over the next week I met with a title specialist, a surveyor, a land use consultant, a commercial appraiser, and the answer stayed the same. The motel itself was shabby. The rooms were tired. The sign was embarrassing. The pool was useless. But the land beneath and behind it, the land was worth millions. Not because of the rooms, because of the route, the easements, the water, the future. Bonnie had hidden value where greedy people never look. Under bad paint, inside maintenance headaches, behind ugly doors, beneath the thing that looked too broken to fight over. Felt familiar. My children had done the exact same thing. They took the house, the accounts, the trucks, the business, the things that looked valuable, and they left me the ugly thing. The ugly thing was the kingdom. I sat in Bonnie's office with the map spread around me and laughed so hard I ended up crying into one of her old motel towels. Not because I found money, because for the first time since Walter died, I felt the universe tilt back toward balance. I called no one in my family. Not Ryan. Not Melissa. Not Raymond. Not Jolene. I called a lawyer in Phoenix, a commercial land appraiser in Flagstaff, a plumber, because if life hands you a secret worth protecting, the first thing you do is fix what leaks. The weeks after that were the most alive I had felt in years. I paid the motel's back taxes. I repaired plumbing in 4 units. I got 6 rooms rentable again. I reopened nightly bookings. Not because room revenue mattered much compared to the land, because functioning businesses create paper trails. Paper trails prove competence. Competence is armor when family decides you have become inconvenient. I opened a local bank account, transferred every payment cleanly, kept receipts, kept invoices, kept title correspondence, kept photos of every repair. Every one. Because when people like Ryan and Tessa realize the person they dismissed is not collapsing, they do not apologize. They escalate. The first signal came from Ryan. A voicemail. Too casual. Mom, Melissa says you've been spending money out there. Where is that coming from? Not, how are you? Are you safe? Are you lonely? Where is that coming from? There it was. The number. That was what they loved. Not me. Not Bonnie. Not even Walter's memory. The number. I did not answer. Melissa came first. Of course she did. Melissa always arrives before the storm so she can claim later she was only checking the weather. She pulled into the lot in a rental sedan that looked too polished for the Desert Star. I was repainting the courtyard railing when she stepped out. You fixed it, she said. Some of it. Where did you get the money? No hello. No hug. No how are you, Mom, after Dad died and we stripped your life down to a suitcase. Just the question. I said, I'm managing. You had $83. I had more than $83. That's not what Ryan said. That line told me everything. They were comparing notes about my liquidity. Family love had already been translated into monitoring. She stayed for 2 hours. Asked 12 questions. Accepted iced tea. Looked at the office. Looked at the back lot. And then she saw the survey flags. That was when I saw real fear in her. Not concern. Fear. Because survey flags mean value. Value means miscalculation. And in families like mine, miscalculation produces aggression faster than love ever produced loyalty. After she left, I called my attorney and said, how quickly can we move? He said, how loud is the family? I said, loud enough. He said, then very. A week later Ryan came. Not alone. With Tessa. I am glad Tessa came because some truths arrive faster when the smartest predator in the room realizes she is not the only one who can read documents. They stepped into Bonnie's office like buyers entering a foreclosure. Ryan angry. Tessa composed. Tessa is the kind of woman who can stand inside a collapsing situation and still look like she expects a beverage service. Melissa had shown up separately and was sitting by the office window with her hands folded like guilt could be kept tidy if she held still enough. Ryan began badly. "Mom, what exactly is going on out here?" I said. "I'm working." He looked around the room like it offended him personally. Tessa didn't waste time with emotion. She scanned the desk, the title files, the maps, the survey notes, the repair receipts. Then she asked the question, how much is the property really worth? There it was. Clean. No disguise. No concern. "No, Mom, we're worried. Just the number." I smiled. "More than you thought. Less than your character cost you." Ryan went pale. Melissa closed her eyes. Tessa's face sharpened. They began in the order I expected. First, denial. "Mom, you're misunderstanding what we were trying to do." Then reframing. "We were only trying to stabilize everything after Dad died." Then accusation. "You withheld information." Then moral outrage. "You let us believe you were struggling." That one nearly made me laugh. They had taken the house, the business control, the accounts, the truck. They had parked me in Melissa's guest room with brochures for senior apartments. And now they were angry that I had not immediately informed them when the thing they mocked turned out to be valuable. That is greed in its purest form. Not just wanting what is mine. Being offended that I had it without telling you. I said, "You took every visible thing. You laughed at what was left. That is not withholding. That is carelessness." Ryan took a step toward the desk. Tessa put a hand on his arm. There. That tiny movement. That was when I knew who really ran their marriage. Not because she was stronger. Because she was colder. She saw the terrain faster. She asked about title. Beneficiary status. Outside counsel. Survey certification. Pending letters of intent. That was when I understood the next move would not be emotional. It would be procedural. Sure enough, 2 weeks later the petition arrived. Concern. Unexplained financial decisions. Isolation. Potential exploitation by third parties. Third parties. That was what they called. Leonard the diner waitress, the surveyor, my attorney. It is astonishing how quickly family invents sinister outsiders once they realize they are not the ones holding the keys anymore. But I had seen it coming. That was the difference between this version of me and the woman sitting numb at Ryan's dining table with lemon water in front of her. This version kept receipts. So I ordered a full cognitive evaluation. Not because I doubted myself. Because I knew they would try to make doubt look professional. I gathered motel income tax records, repair invoices, title chains, land appraisals, commercial correspondence, booking ledgers, before and after photos, bank statements, probate documents, boxes. Not papers. Boxes. By then, the story I was building was stronger than the one they were trying to assign me. I was not drifting. I was rebuilding. Melissa called twice before the hearing. Crying. Apologizing. Then backtracking. Then apologizing again. Weakness near greed. Is not innocence. I knew that by then. Ryan called once and said, "Mom, you're forcing this." No. I thought. You forced it the moment you assumed I would go quietly. The morning of the hearing I wore navy. Simple pearls. Low heels. The kind of outfit that says, "I am not here to impress you, I am here to outlast you." And I carried evidence like I was carrying my own pulse. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling. A tired clock. Air conditioning too cold for the season. Ryan and Melissa sat together. Tessa sat slightly behind Ryan, which told me their lawyer had advised optics. Concerned children. Grieving mother. Outside influence. That was the picture they wanted. My lawyer wanted a different picture. Competent widow. Clear title rights. Active income. Documented rebuild. So that is what we gave the court. The petition claimed emotional instability, irrational financial conduct, vulnerability to manipulation, concerning isolation. My lawyer opened box 1. Then box 2. Then box 3. He showed Lawful beneficiary ownership, clean title, chain, paid taxes, motel operations, repair history, commercial negotiations, cognitive assessment, results, clean banking activity, documented revenue. The judge listened, turned pages, asked sharp questions. Ryan's lawyer fumbled once, then twice. Then the judge asked the question that cracked their structure open. Do you have medical evidence that Mrs. Carter lacks capacity? Silence. Not long. Just long enough. That is all a courtroom usually needs. Then the judge removed her glasses, looked directly at Ryan and Melissa and said, "From where I'm sitting, Mrs. Carter appears to be the only adult in this matter. I will not pretend that didn't feel good. It did. Not because I wanted to humiliate my children. Because humiliation is often the only language entitlement understands once love stops subsidizing it." The petition was dismissed. Fast. Cleanly. With just enough visible irritation from the judge to stain the experience permanently for all of them. Afterward, Ryan cornered me in the hallway. "What exactly did Aunt Bonnie leave you?" That question. Not, "Mom, how did we get here? Are you okay? Can we fix any of this?" What exactly did Aunt Bonnie leave you? I looked at my son. The child I drove to baseball practice for 8 years. The teenager whose broken heart I once sat beside until 2 a.m. The man whose down payment I helped cover because I believed family meant lifting each other. And I said, "Enough to know what you were willing to sell me for." Then I walked away. Melissa cried in the courthouse parking lot. Real crying this time. Not social tears. Not leverage. Collapse. She said, "I don't know when I became this person." I believed her. That was the tragedy. She had not become monstrous. She had become weak near monstrous people. That happens more often than monsters themselves. I told her, weakness near greed is not innocence. She nodded like someone swallowing glass. That was the first honest thing between us in months. The commercial deal finalized 6 months later. Not a full sale. A phased land agreement. Retained rights. Royalties. Water right payments. The sort of arrangement that transforms your life without forcing you to abandon the ground that changed it. I kept the motel. That shocked everyone. Even my lawyer. He said, "You could liquidate, take the money, and never look at this place again." He was right. But the Desert Star had become more than property. It had become proof. Proof that what looks broken is not the same as what is worthless. Proof that ugly things can hide whole futures. Proof that a woman stripped of visible comfort can still build a second life from the one thing people mocked. So I kept it. I restored the units. Fresh paint. New doors. Working air conditioning. Real plumbing. A decent courtyard. A coffee station Bonnie would have hated because she distrusted both hospitality and optimism. I kept room 8 as close to itself as possible. Some places are not meant to become fancy. Only faithful. I named the courtyard after Walter. That mattered to me. Because I refused to let my husband be reduced to the paperwork his children used to divide the aftermath of him. With the first large payout, I did not buy a luxury car. I did not buy jewelry. I did not buy a second house. I opened a legal resource and emergency housing fund for older women, displaced by family asset abuse. Because once you have been politely erased, you begin recognizing the language of erasure everywhere. The widow whose son just moved some accounts for convenience. The retired teacher whose daughter had her sign a deed transfer, temporarily. The veteran whose nephew became power of attorney, and somehow also became owner of the checking account. People think family theft looks dramatic. Usually it doesn't. Usually it looks responsible. Usually it sounds loving. Usually it comes with folders. That is why it works. Melissa and I speak now. Carefully. Not perfectly. But honestly. And honesty is more useful than warmth with a calculator behind it. Ryan and Tessa divorced within the year. I do not say that with pleasure. Just accuracy. Some marriages survive pressure. Others were built out of shared entitlement and collapse when entitlement is removed. Raymond visited once and stood in the courtyard with his thumbs in his pockets and said, "Bonnie would be furious you made this place nice." I said, "Good." He laughed so hard he nearly choked on his iced tea. Jolene still tells relatives I changed after Walter died. She is correct. I did. Grief stripped politeness out of me. The motel finished the job. These days I wake early, make coffee, walk the courtyard, read in Bonnie's old office chair, check the bookings, talk to the women who come through the fund with folders of their own and fear in their eyes and no language yet for what their families are doing to them. Sometimes I still miss Walter so sharply it feels like the sun itself has edges. Grief doesn't leave, changes shape, but now it lives beside other things. Competence, purpose, clarity, a second life I never asked for but one I know how to honor. And sometimes, late in the day when the desert star sign flickers on and room 8 glows softly through the curtain, I think about that first night with one suitcase and $83. How small I felt. How finished. How discarded. And I wish I could tell that version of myself something simple. They didn't leave you with nothing. They left you with the thing they were too shallow to understand. So tell me honestly. Your own family took the house, the car, the money, and the business, and left you only the thing they thought was worthless. Would you have taken it? And what would you have done when it turned out to be the one thing worth everything? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the part other people laughed at, subscribe. Because some stories are not just stories. Some are warnings. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new stories.